Picture a life stretching across nearly 10 centuries, when today we marvel at anyone who reaches their 100th birthday. The earliest figures of Scripture walked the earth for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Methuselah, humanity's longest-lived soul, drew breath for an astonishing 969 years. He watched more than 10 generations enter this world and leave it behind. Adam, the very first human being, reigned over creation for 930 years as the ultimate father of all mankind. Noah, who would one day save life itself from the waters of destruction, bridged two entirely separate worlds across his remarkable 950 years. These were no ordinary mortals. They stood as titans of the ancient world, walking legends whose influence shaped history across countless generations. But what was their secret? How did they achieve such incredible lifespans? And why can't we? The truth will leave you stunned. Today, we'll explore the hidden mysteries behind these extraordinary long-lived patriarchs. Everything started with Adam, fashioned by the very hands of the Almighty. He wasn't merely the ancestor of all people. He served as humanity's original sovereign, dwelling on this planet for nearly a millennium. The 5th chapter of Genesis, verse 5, declares that Adam walked the earth for 930 years before drawing his final breath. Let that sink in. 930 years. Adam watched his sons, their sons, their sons' sons, and generation after generation flourish before him. He became a breathing archive, holding within himself the recollections of paradise, understanding every mystery of how the world began. For almost 1,000 years, Adam served as the connection between the flawless existence he once knew in Eden and the harsh reality his offspring now inhabited. His remarkable age represented far more than mere numbers. It stood as living proof of mankind's original magnificence. Adam possessed stories spanning centuries, offering insight drawn from personal encounters with the Creator himself. When Adam shared his wisdom, people listened with deep respect, for his words carried the gravity of 1,000 years of living. He could recall the Creator's voice echoing through the garden, the sensation of perfect unity with the divine, and the sour aftertaste of that fateful bite from the forbidden tree. Those 930 years gave Adam a front-row seat to humanity's earliest steps. He observed farming techniques develop, watched the first settlements emerge, witnessed tools and musical instruments come into existence. Yet despite all this transformation, Adam remained the supreme authority on existence before corruption entered creation. His tales of Eden weren't simply recollections. They were breathing testimonies to how the Almighty originally intended human life to unfold. Adam's exceptional duration meant that for nearly a millennium, humanity could access someone who had strolled alongside the Creator in complete purity. Following Abel's murder and Cain's banishment, the Almighty blessed Adam with another remarkable son named Seth. This child would become the beacon of hope for the righteous bloodline, and his existence proved equally extraordinary. Genesis chapter 5, verse 8, records that Seth's days totaled 912 years before his death. Seth endured 912 years, falling just 18 years short of his father's record. Through him, the faithful lineage continued its journey on earth. Seth wasn't simply Abel's substitute. The Almighty selected him specifically to keep authentic faith burning bright. His extended years enabled him to guide generation after generation, transmitting not merely information, but genuine devotion to the one true God. Throughout his 9-century journey, Seth grew into the leader of a family devoted to seeking the Lord. He observed entire civilizations emerge and transform, while steadfastly maintaining the pure devotion established at the beginning of time. Seth dedicated his nearly 1,000 years to constructing a heritage of belief that would survive through all ages. While Cain's offspring occupied themselves with urban development and technological progress, Seth concentrated on something infinitely more valuable, safeguarding divine knowledge. His 912 years provided sufficient time to lay unshakable spiritual groundwork within his family tree. Seth recognized that such longevity came as a divine blessing, intended not for personal pleasure, but for protecting sacred truth. He invested every single one of his 912 years, ensuring coming generations would recognize their Maker. Seth's extended existence allowed him to observe how both virtue and wickedness unfolded across centuries. He watched the faithful lineage thrive under heavenly favor, while Cain's ungodly descendants spiraled deeper into moral decay. The understanding Seth gathered over 9 centuries transformed him into a venerated figure who could speak with genuine authority about divine matters. His descendants viewed him not simply as a family leader, but as a living bridge to the era when the Almighty walked beside humanity in the garden. Something extraordinary occurred in human history during the lifetime of Enosh, Seth's son. Enosh survived 905 years, according to Genesis chapter 5, verse 11, which states that his days reached 905 years before his passing. Yet his significance extends far beyond mere longevity. His era marked the moment when humanity began seeking the Lord through organized devotion. Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, reveals that Seth fathered a son whom he named Enosh. From that point forward, people started calling upon the Lord's name collectively. Enosh observed the emergence of communal worship, watching his descendants unite in pursuit of their Creator. Across his 9 centuries, he functioned as a spiritual guide, directing people toward the divine. His prolonged existence enabled him to establish devotional practices that would persist for countless generations. Enosh witnessed early human society develop while preserving the sacred foundation linking mankind to its Maker. The declaration that people began calling upon the Lord's name during Enosh's lifetime indicates that structured worship gatherings originated within his 905 years. This represented more than private prayer. This was collective spiritual assembly where communities came together seeking the Almighty. Enosh's remarkable duration on earth gave him the opportunity to polish and perfect these sacred practices. For more than 900 years, he served simultaneously as a spiritual authority and a breathing demonstration of what genuine devotion to the Almighty looked like. Enosh's extended existence coincided with humanity's expansion across the globe, and he ensured that wherever his offspring traveled, they brought with them the understanding of how to reach out to their Creator. His 905 years were dedicated to cultivating a devotional tradition that would endure across generations. Enosh grasped that his exceptional lifespan came as a heavenly gift, carrying tremendous obligation, the duty to instruct others in nurturing their bond with the divine. The faithful bloodline continued through Canaan, who breathed for 910 years. Genesis chapter 5, verse 14, documents that Canaan's days numbered 910 years before his death. Canaan embodied the persistence of belief across successive generations. His existence, spanning more than 9 centuries, proved that the Almighty was protecting the righteous lineage. He witnessed hundreds of descendants enter the world and mature, each one bearing the spiritual inheritance passed down from Adam. Canaan served as more than a simple connection in the family chain. He acted as a protector of faith, preserving divine knowledge during an era when humanity was starting to drift from its Creator. His 910 years went into shaping a family that revered the Lord. Canaan observed human knowledge and abilities expand dramatically, yet never forgot what held true importance: sustaining communion with the Almighty. His wisdom, gathered across centuries, helped steer his family through the trials of an evolving world. Throughout Canaan's 910 years, human society grew increasingly intricate. Innovation flourished, urban centers expanded, and culture became more refined. Yet amid all these shifts, Canaan stayed devoted to the spiritual formation of his offspring. His prolonged existence permitted him to personally guide multiple generations, guaranteeing that awareness of the divine wouldn't vanish beneath the noise of advancement. Canaan's 910 years functioned like an unwavering beacon, offering constant direction to his family in an ever more chaotic world. He possessed the rare viewpoint of someone capable of recognizing how choices rippled through time, having observed how decisions in one generation shaped the next. Canaan's exceptional longevity transformed him into a living connection between the primordial age and the emerging civilization of his day. His descendants understood that Canaan's words carried the weight of someone who had watched entire movements flourish and collapse, witnessed thousands of births and deaths, and observed the gradual transformations reshaping human existence. Mahalalel followed, surviving 895 years. Genesis chapter 5 verse 17 states that Mahalalel's days totaled 895 years before his passing. Though he lived somewhat fewer years than those before him, Mahalalel still experienced nearly 9 centuries of existence. His name translates to praise of the Almighty, and his life embodied precisely that, unceasing glorification of the Creator. For close to 900 years, Mahalalel maintained the sacred flame burning within his household. He instructed children, grandchildren, and countless subsequent generations in divine principles. His longevity enabled him to function as a spiritual beacon, illuminating the path toward the Creator for his descendants during an era when darkness was creeping across the earth. Mahalalel's extended years testified to divine faithfulness, demonstrating that those who remained loyal could experience heavenly favor for centuries. He evolved into a living illustration of complete dedication to glorifying the Maker. The significance behind Mahalalel's name, praise of the Almighty, perfectly encapsulated his 895-year journey. Day after day for nearly 9 centuries, Mahalalel honored his name through unwavering worship and adoration. His exceptional duration allowed him to achieve spiritual depth unrivaled among his contemporaries. Mahalalel invested his 895 years not merely in private devotion, but in showing others how to glorify the Creator with authenticity and fervor. He recognized that worship transcended mere rituals or ceremonies. True devotion meant cultivating an inner posture of awe and thankfulness toward the Maker. Mahalalel's lengthy existence overlapped with an era when moral corruption began surfacing across the world, rendering his steadfast praise even more meaningful. He rose as a pillar of virtue in an increasingly shadowed world, proving that honoring the Creator remained possible. Mahalalel's 895 years of unwavering devotion forged a heritage that would motivate his offspring for generations afterward. Next arrived Jared, whose name signifies descent. He survived 962 years, claiming the position of second longest-lived human before the Great Deluge. Genesis chapter 5 verse 20 proclaims that Jared's days reached 962 years before his death. Jared fathered Enoch and became grandfather to Methuselah. Across his 962 years, he observed some of antiquity's most profound transformations. His extraordinary duration positioned him as a bridge spanning different epochs, watching entire generations arrive, flourish, and fade away. Jared represented far more than a family patriarch. He stood as a living witness to divine constancy through the ages. His nearly 1,000 years were invested in building a family that pursued the Lord with genuine hearts. Jared endured through periods of tremendous change in human development, yet preserved the spiritual bedrock his forebears had established. The insight he accumulated over nearly a millennium elevated him to a position of profound respect among his descendants. Jared's 962 years secured his place as the second longest surviving human before the Great Deluge. His name, carrying the meaning of descent, proved fitting as he lived to witness humanity's moral decline while evil spread throughout the earth. Yet Jared himself never wavered from his devotion to the Almighty. For 962 years, he held firm to the sacred principles handed down from Adam through Seth, Enosh, Canaan, and Mahalalel. Jared's phenomenal lifespan transformed him into a treasury of insight and understanding for his entire society. People journeyed vast distances seeking his guidance, recognizing that his counsel bore the significance of nearly a millennium of lived experience. Jared's 962 years encompassed the complete lifetimes of many among his offspring, establishing him as an enduring fixture in their world. His extended existence meant that generation after generation could receive direct teaching from him, ensuring divine knowledge remained intact and accurately transmitted. Jared's nearly 1,000 years testified to the Creator's patience and compassion during an era when humanity began wandering from its Maker. Yet, among all these remarkable figures, Enoch distinguished himself in an extraordinary manner. He walked the earth for merely 365 years, far fewer than his peers. However, Genesis chapter 5, verse 24, reveals something astounding. Enoch maintained such intimate communion with the Almighty that one day he simply vanished, taken directly by the Creator. Enoch never tasted death like the others. The book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 5, clarifies that through faith Enoch was transported to heaven without experiencing mortality, disappearing because the Almighty had taken him elsewhere. Before this miraculous departure, Scripture confirms he had earned the testimony of pleasing his Creator. Throughout his 365 years, Enoch cultivated an unparalleled closeness with the divine. He literally journeyed alongside the Almighty, nurturing such profound fellowship that the Creator chose to bring him home without passing through death. Enoch became undeniable evidence that dwelling in complete harmony with the Maker was achievable. His bodily transfer to heaven without dying stood unprecedented and would remain unmatched until Elijah experienced the same centuries afterward. Enoch's comparatively brief yet flawless existence demonstrated that the depth of one's bond with the Creator outweighed the length of one's days. While his father Jared survived 962 years and his son Methuselah would reach 969 years, Enoch's 365 years were lived so perfectly that the Almighty drew him straight into heaven. The expression "walked with the Creator" suggests a degree of closeness and fellowship remarkable even for that ancient era. Enoch spent his 365 years in such intimate divine companionship that the barrier separating earth from heaven grew paper-thin around him. His daily journeys with the Almighty transcended mere spiritual discipline, becoming actual encounters with divine presence. Enoch's brief but unblemished life delivered a powerful message to his descendants about what genuine relationship with the Creator could become. While others measured their lives in centuries, Enoch measured his in eternal significance. His departure without death proclaimed clearly to the ancient world that the Almighty remained approachable, still yearning for deep connection with humanity, still capable of miraculous intervention in mortal affairs. Enoch's 365 years demonstrated that pleasing the Creator so thoroughly was possible that heaven could become more tangible than earth itself. And now we arrive at Methuselah, the man who shattered every longevity record. Born to Enoch, he survived an astounding 969 years. Genesis chapter 5, verse 27, documents that Methuselah's days totaled 969 years before his death. Methuselah wasn't merely history's longest-lived human. He served as a breathing witness to nearly a millennium of civilization. He observed dozens of generations arrive, mature, and depart this world. Across his 969 years, Methuselah gathered more experience and insight than any other person who ever lived. His very name became a byword for extreme old age. Methuselah drew his final breath during the same year the floodwaters came, as though the Almighty had sustained his existence until judgment's final moment. His nearly 1,000 years represented the dying breath of humanity's golden age of longevity. Methuselah's lifetime stretched across the entire era before the deluge, establishing him as the supreme witness to humanity's earliest chapters. The weight of Methuselah's 969 years defies adequate description. He entered the world during Adam's lifetime and remained until Noah's flood arrived. This means Methuselah personally knew Adam for 243 years and still drew breath when Noah came into existence. His 969 years transformed him into a living thread connecting humanity's absolute beginning to its first catastrophic renewal. Methuselah's phenomenal duration permitted him to observe humanity's complete moral collapse, from its comparatively pure origins to the depravity that ultimately broke the Creator's heart. For 969 years, Methuselah watched civilization gradually abandon its maker. He witnessed brutality emerge, corruption spread, and wickedness multiply until divine grief reached its breaking point. Yet Methuselah himself preserved his faithfulness throughout his nearly 1,000 years of existence. His longevity proved simultaneously a gift and a weight to carry. A gift because it enabled him to accumulate incomparable wisdom and understanding, yet a burden because he was forced to watch the world he cherished spiral slowly into destruction. Methuselah's 969 years concluded the very year divine judgment descended upon the earth through the catastrophic flood, closing one chapter and opening another in human history. The world existing before that great deluge bore no resemblance to the one we inhabit today. It was a paradise crafted for life to thrive abundantly, where every element operated in flawless coordination to sustain human longevity. Genesis chapter 2, verse 8 reveals that the Lord fashioned a garden in the eastern region of Eden, placing within it the man he had created. This was no ordinary garden. The Creator himself had fashioned the ultimate habitat for human existence. Eden embodied the flawless conditions the Almighty envisioned for all creation. Within its borders grew every variety of tree, each one beautiful to behold and laden with nourishing fruit. Genesis chapter 2, verse 9 describes how the Almighty caused magnificent trees to spring from the soil, delightful in appearance and abundant with sustenance. At the garden's heart stood two remarkable trees, one offering eternal life, the other bearing the forbidden fruit of moral knowledge. Eden served as a blueprint, showing what the entire planet could become. This extraordinary balance of aesthetic splendor, nutritional abundance, and life-giving properties established Eden as the supreme environment for human prosperity. Waterways coursed through this paradise, delivering continuous moisture and maintaining ideal humidity. Genesis chapter 2, verse 10 describes how a mighty river emerged from Eden to nourish the garden before splitting into 4 separate branches. This network of streams guaranteed that every corner of paradise received precisely the hydration it required. The earth beneath was incredibly fertile, yielding plentiful harvests without backbreaking toil. Temperatures remained perfectly comfortable, the atmosphere stayed crystal pure, and every element conspired to preserve life without end. Adam and Eve didn't merely exist within Eden. They flourished there, never experiencing the environmental pressures that would eventually diminish human lifespans. Within this untouched realm, illness and physical suffering simply did not exist. Human physiology operated precisely according to divine specifications, with no malfunction or deterioration. No viral infections existed, no harmful bacteria invaded bodies, no inherited conditions afflicted anyone, no gradual physical decline occurred. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31 reveals that when the Creator surveyed everything brought into existence, including humanity, he pronounced it exceedingly good. This Hebrew expression implies absolute perfection and complete operational excellence. Human defense mechanisms functioned impeccably. Internal organs operated at peak performance, and the body's capacity for restoration and renewal was remarkable beyond imagination. Nobody endured malignancies, cardiovascular problems, joint deterioration, or the countless afflictions tormenting people in our modern age. Without disease attacking the body, the natural progression toward old age moved at an extraordinarily gradual pace. Cellular renewal proceeded efficiently, vital organs retained their vigor, and bodily systems continued operating in seamless coordination across centuries. Free from the relentless assault of pathogens and environmental poisons, human physiology could dedicate all its resources toward sustaining vibrant existence. Genetic information operated according to original specifications, generating robust, vigorous bodies capable of enduring nearly a millennium. This absence of sickness represented one of the fundamental reasons those ancient patriarchs achieved such phenomenal lifespans. Among the most crucial distinctions separating the pre-flood era from our own was the composition of the atmosphere. Numerous scripture scholars interpret Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 and 7 as depicting a distinctive atmospheric arrangement where the Almighty commanded a vast expanse to separate waters above from waters below. The Creator established this expanse, dividing moisture suspended high above from moisture gathered below on Earth's surface. This passage indicates that a layer of water vapor once enveloped our planet, forming a defensive barrier around the globe. Such a moisture shield would have intercepted damaging space radiation and ultraviolet energy that destroys genetic material and hastens physical decline. The protective benefits of this atmospheric barrier deserve tremendous emphasis. Space radiation continuously strikes our world today, triggering genetic alterations and cellular destruction that drive aging and disease. Yet in that ancient era, this vapor envelope functioned as nature's own defense system, shielding every living creature from such destructive forces. Atmospheric density would have increased significantly, enabling superior oxygen delivery throughout the circulatory system. This oxygen-rich environment would have accelerated cellular activity, enhanced recovery from injury, and amplified overall physical vigor. The moisture canopy additionally produced warming effects that stabilized temperatures globally, eliminating the harsh climatic extremes that strain human bodies in our current age. The original nutritional plan the Almighty established for humanity consisted entirely of vegetation, perfectly calibrated for maximum wellness and extended life. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 preserves the Creator's initial food directive, declaring that every seed-producing plant across the entire planet and every fruit-bearing tree had been provided as human sustenance. This wasn't random vegetation. These were divinely engineered foods supplying every requirement for human physiology. Fruits and vegetables growing in that ancient world far surpassed anything available in our era. They grew larger, contained superior nutritional profiles, and achieved perfect equilibrium in their mineral and vitamin composition. The ground teemed with essential trace elements supporting ideal plant development, which subsequently delivered ideal human nourishment. This vegetation-based regimen contained none of the damaging consequences of manufactured foods, synthetic chemicals, or the contamination plaguing contemporary food sources. Antioxidant compounds within these pristine plants delivered formidable defense against cellular deterioration and aging. Abundant fiber ensured optimal digestive function, while natural enzymatic compounds facilitated supreme nutrient uptake. This dietary approach, paired with the unspoiled surroundings, furnished everything human physiology required not simply for survival, but for thriving across centuries. Avoiding animal flesh in this original regimen prevented exposure to illnesses transferable from creatures to humans, and the impeccable nutritional harmony supported the body's extraordinary capacity for regeneration and self-repair spanning hundreds of years. The biological blueprint of humanity's earliest ancestors remained absolutely flawless and untainted. The Almighty fashioned Adam and Eve with immaculate genetic coding, entirely free from hereditary flaws or corrupted sequences. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27 confirms that bearing the divine image meant possessing biological perfection. No inherited medical conditions existed, no tendencies toward sickness lay dormant within their cells, no chromosomal irregularities threatened their well-being. Their hereditary foundations stood robust and powerful, engineered to sustain existence across vast stretches of time. Every subsequent generation descending from this original pair received this biological excellence, at least throughout those initial centuries. Without environmental contaminants, radiation exposure, or infectious agents attacking their systems, alterations to genetic material occurred with extreme rarity. Cellular mechanisms designed to preserve genetic accuracy operated flawlessly, safeguarding hereditary precision from one generation to the next. This biological purity proved essential for the remarkable lifespans achieved by those ancient forefathers. Contemporary humans carry the accumulated hereditary deterioration of countless millennia, whereas those earliest generations began with unblemished biological material and inhabited surroundings that maintained that pristine state. Unions between closely related individuals during those first generations posed no dangers because no hereditary weaknesses existed to multiply. Abraham could wed his half-sister Sarah without medical concerns because the hereditary foundation retained substantial purity. This biological superiority, paired with optimal living conditions, established everything necessary for humans to survive, approaching a full millennium. Weather patterns across the pre-flood planet maintained remarkable consistency and uniformity everywhere. No frozen polar regions existed, no barren wastelands spread across continents, no violent atmospheric phenomena threatened inhabitants. Genesis chapter 2 verses 5 and 6 offers insight into these conditions, explaining that the Almighty had not yet sent rainfall upon the ground, and no cultivators worked the soil. Instead, moisture rose gently from below, hydrating the entire planetary surface. A delicate vapor system nourished the earth, rather than destructive downpours and tempests. This arrangement produced perfectly regulated irrigation, maintaining supreme humidity across all regions. Warmth remained consistently comfortable from one end of the globe to the other, establishing a lush paradise stretching across every continent. No cyclones devastated coastlines, no funnel clouds tore through settlements, no frozen storms buried communities, nothing that strains human physiology and diminishes years of life. Pressure in the atmosphere held steady, preventing the ailments that accompany meteorological shifts. This atmospheric constancy meant inhabitants never confronted the physical burden of adjusting to temperature extremes or violent weather. Human physiology could sustain peak operation without perpetually compensating for environmental fluctuations. These ideal meteorological conditions represented yet another vital element, supporting the phenomenal duration achieved by those ancient forefathers. They inhabited a realm where each sunrise brought conditions resembling a flawless spring morning, with supreme temperature, moisture levels, and atmospheric qualities nurturing vitality and wellness. Perhaps most significantly, that ancient world featured humanity's intimate bond with the divine and freedom from entrenched wickedness. Genesis chapter 3 verse 8 reveals that before transgression entered the picture, the Creator would stroll through the garden during evening's coolness, suggesting regular personal communion between the Almighty and those He had made. Even following that initial disobedience, this divine closeness persisted for many generations, evident in figures like Enoch, who journeyed alongside the Creator. This intimate connection with the origin of all existence profoundly influenced human longevity. Transgression produces mortality, while virtue sustains existence. Those earliest generations, though imperfect, preserved far deeper communion with the Almighty than their distant descendants would. They possessed immediate access to heavenly guidance, shelter, and favor. Communication with the divine wasn't merely ceremonial practice, it constituted genuine dialogue with their Maker. This sacred dimension demands consideration when examining their extraordinary duration on earth. Freedom from systematic moral corruption enabled society to operate more cooperatively, with diminished brutality, reduced anxiety, and less collective turmoil draining human vitality. Communities coexisted peacefully with each other and their surroundings. The consequences of that original transgression had emerged, but hadn't yet reached full destructive maturity. The complete ramifications of moral corruption would progressively manifest across subsequent centuries, but those initial generations still experienced much of the divine favor proclaimed at creation's dawn. This sacred element may have represented the most crucial factor enabling those ancient patriarchs to approach 1,000 years of existence. Our planet itself remained youthful and operating at maximum natural capacity and vigor. Everything existed fresh, newly formed, and functioning at peak performance. The ground possessed extraordinary fertility, never having suffered depletion from centuries of agricultural exploitation. Mineral composition achieved perfect equilibrium, delivering supreme nourishment to vegetation and the humans consuming it. Waterways flowed absolutely pure and undefiled, untouched by the contamination and synthetic substances compromising modern supplies. The atmosphere remained pristine and invigorating, with supreme oxygen concentrations and no manufacturing residues. The complete natural order maintained perfect equilibrium, with no species vanishing, no environmental destruction occurring, no resources exhausted. Genesis chapter 1, verses 11 and 12, portrays how the earth generated grasses and seed-producing vegetation according to their varieties, along with fruit-bearing trees containing seeds within themselves according to their types. The Creator observed all this and declared it excellent. Everything operated at maximum productive capacity. The planet had not yet endured the geological upheavals, atmospheric transformations, and environmental decline that subsequent ages would bring. Raw materials existed in abundance and remained readily available. No scarcity plagued inhabitants, no hunger swept through populations, no environmental hardships undermined human wellness. Earth's magnetic barrier possessed greater strength, offering enhanced defense against space radiation. The entire globe resembled a meticulously tended paradise engineered to nurture existence under supreme conditions. This youthful, thriving planet provided the ideal foundation for the remarkable longevity defining that ancient era. Essential minerals and trace nutrients throughout the pre-flood terrain spread evenly and remained readily available for vegetation to absorb. Ground composition achieved perfection, harboring every substance required for supreme plant development and human nourishment. Unlike modern exhausted farmland demanding synthetic supplements, the original terrain naturally overflowed with calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, and countless other vital minerals. These elements became concentrated within the fruits and vegetables people consumed, furnishing their bodies with everything essential for peak cellular performance. Water sources consisted of pristine springs and streams emerging from deep underground reservoirs, completely untouched by contamination. These immaculate waterways contained naturally occurring minerals in supreme proportion, producing what we might describe as nature's ultimate mineral-enriched water. Without manufacturing waste, chemical drainage, or ecological toxins, every breath inhaled, every sip swallowed, every morsel consumed promoted wellness and extended existence rather than causing the gradual poisoning characteristic of contemporary life. Living systems throughout that ancient world functioned at maximum effectiveness. Vegetation grew larger, hardier, and more nourishing than anything existing today. Trees yielded produce throughout the entire year under these supreme conditions, guaranteeing endless supplies of fresh, vibrant nourishment. Without destructive insects, botanical diseases, or environmental pressures, plants could channel all their energy toward generating maximum nutritional value. Fruits likely dwarfed modern varieties many times over, concentrated with vitamins, minerals, and life-sustaining compounds. The complete food network maintained perfect harmony, lacking parasites, dangerous microorganisms, or poisonous vegetation. Everything emerging from the ground proved safe and advantageous for human consumption. This supreme agricultural arrangement delivered not mere sustenance, but peak nourishment supporting extraordinarily lengthy, vigorous lives. Freedom from catastrophic events and geological turbulence meant people could pass their entire existence without dreading earthquakes, volcanic explosions, flooding, or other devastating occurrences. Earth's outer layer remained steady, land masses occupied their supreme positions, and no shifting plates or geological disturbances threatened stability. Mountain chains stood precisely where needed to create favorable atmospheric patterns, and planetary rotation continued steady and reliable. Without violent meteorological events, inhabitants never endured survival crises. Nobody constructed emergency shelters, escaped approaching storms, or suffered through periods of drought and starvation. This tranquil, reliable environment permitted human nervous systems to stay peaceful and unburdened, contributing enormously to extended existence. Persistent tension represents a primary factor diminishing contemporary lifespans, yet those ancient forefathers inhabited a realm entirely free from environmental anxiety and natural catastrophes. Celestial arrangements also aligned supremely for sustaining existence. Earth's orbital path remained steady, preserving supreme distance from the Sun for favorable temperatures. The Moon occupied an ideal position, creating beneficial tidal movements that helped govern planetary weather and oceanic patterns. Solar energy reaching the surface passed through the atmospheric moisture barrier, delivering warmth and illumination without the damaging consequences we encounter presently. No solar eruptions or cosmic disturbances threatened terrestrial existence. The complete planetary arrangement functioned like precision machinery, with every heavenly body positioned supremely to nurture life below. This universal harmony contributed to the steady, life-nurturing circumstances, enabling humans to approach 1,000 years of existence. The devastating deluge transformed everything. When waters withdrew and Noah descended from the vessel, he encountered a realm that would never recover its former glory. The supreme circumstances supporting nearly millennium-long existences had vanished permanently, and humanity would now witness gradual but persistent decline in longevity. Noah himself became the living connection between two utterly distinct chapters of human history. Genesis chapter 9 verse 29 records that Noah's days totaled 950 years before his death. Noah's 950 years established him as an unparalleled figure across human experience. He alone survived in both the world before destruction and the world emerging afterward. For 6 centuries, Noah inhabited the supreme realm existing since creation's dawn. He experienced the favorable weather, the unspoiled surroundings, and the optimal circumstances enabling his forebears to achieve such phenomenal longevity. Then destruction arrived, and throughout his remaining 350 years, Noah observed the grim truth of a transformed existence. The disparity must have proven staggering. Noah retained memories of existence when everything functioned perfectly, yet now he watched his own offspring begin perishing at progressively younger ages. His 950 years bridged humanity's most profound transition from the magnificent era of extended life to the dawn of abbreviated existence. Noah had journeyed alongside the Almighty before destruction came, receiving divine shelter and favor. Even following the catastrophe, the Creator established a sacred agreement with Noah, as documented in Genesis chapter 9 verse 11, promising that never again would living creatures perish through flooding waters, never again would such destruction devastate the earth. This covenant bond helped preserve Noah's existence even within the altered realm, yet it could not restore the supreme circumstances lost forever. Reu, born to Peleg, matched his father's time on earth exactly, departing at 239 years old, as recorded in Genesis chapter 11. The stark contrast with previous eras showed itself unmistakably through Shem, Noah's direct offspring. Sacred texts document that after welcoming Arphaxad into the world, Shem walked the earth 5 more centuries, bringing more children into existence, accumulating 600 years total. This figure represented a devastating drop of 37% compared to Noah's impressive 950. Even more striking was the gulf separating Shem from ancestors who routinely approached a millennium. Though born under the old sky, Shem spent the bulk of his journey navigating the reshaped landscape. The devastating waters swept over him during his youth, and half a millennium remained for him to observe humanity grappling with its altered reality. This reduction carried meaning far beyond arithmetic. It signaled that the very fabric supporting extended human existence had torn irreparably. Gone was the sheltering vapor above. Shattered were the gentle weather patterns, and the ground beneath had suffered violent upheaval. Shem's 6 centuries opened a chapter of steady decline, each new generation falling shorter than the last. Among the mere 8 individuals emerging from the vessel, Shem held within himself visions of what once was, while laboring to construct what would be. His truncated years stood as perpetual testimony that paradise had slipped beyond recovery. Still, measured against modern standards, 6 centuries defied imagination, confirming that this shift unfolded progressively rather than instantly. Heaven's kindness revealed itself even through this diminishment, affording humanity space to acclimate while retaining enough years for rebuilding society and transmitting accumulated understanding. Arphaxad, Shem's boy, pushed the pattern further downward, managing only 438 years according to sacred records, describing how he welcomed Salah at 35, then persisted 4 centuries more while expanding his family. This meant 162 fewer years than his father had enjoyed. Having arrived after the catastrophe, Arphaxad possessed no first-hand knowledge of the pristine realm Noah once inhabited. Every one of his 438 years played out under harsher skies, amid demanding terrain, stripped of the natural mechanisms that once sustained remarkable longevity. His contemporaries matured entirely within this rougher existence, their shortened spans mirroring the steady erosion of favorable circumstances. Harmful rays from space had begun corrupting hereditary material. Nourishment from the soil weakened as minerals vanished, and surroundings grew steadily more hostile toward sustained human vitality. Nevertheless, exceeding 4 centuries remained astonishing, proving decline stayed measured rather than sudden. Arphaxad observed early attempts at societal reconstruction and territorial expansion. Fresh innovations emerged under his watch, settlements multiplied, and the cultural tapestry defining post-catastrophe humanity began weaving itself together. His lengthy presence proved indispensable for carrying ancient understanding forward while reshaping it for contemporary challenges. Salah, his heir, maintained the descending trajectory at 433 years. Scripture notes he reached 30 when Eber came along, then continued 4 centuries more, raising additional offspring. Merely 5 years separated Salah from his father, hinting that the downward momentum had somewhat steadied. Still, compared against earlier generations, this figure appeared drastically reduced. Salah occupied an epoch of sweeping transformation throughout the recovering world. Populations scattered globally, mastering unfamiliar techniques while birthing unique traditions and tongues. Complexity and variety multiplied, yet survival demanded greater effort. Circumstances kept degrading subtly, each generation inheriting marginally inferior conditions. Salah's extended presence let him chronicle nascent post-flood civilization emerging. Distinct tribal groups coalesced, communities dotted distant territories, and the rich mosaic of human expression began forming. His enduring years anchored society through turbulent transitions, safeguarding inherited wisdom even as everything around kept shifting. The narrow margin between his duration and his father's indicated that although lifespans kept shrinking, the pace wasn't accelerating sharply. This gentle slope granted humanity opportunity for measured adjustment rather than catastrophic collapse. Eber followed, destined for legendary recognition across human memory. Sacred writings reveal his complete journey stretched 464 years, actually surpassing both his father and grandfather. This uptick demonstrated that the pattern didn't trace a rigid downward line. Individual variations appeared across generations. His name echoes through history because it birthed the term identifying those who would eventually constitute Israel's nation. Eber occupied a transformative moment when scaffolding arose for the countless peoples and societies yet to emerge. His 464 years covered supremely consequential times, enabling him to mold successive waves of descendants. His lifetime intersected with both Noah and Abraham, positioning him as an irreplaceable connector, threading through human chronicles. He channeled recollections and practices from early post-catastrophe times, while planting seeds for the lineage destined to occupy central position in heaven's design for humanity. His outliving immediate predecessors hints that duration depended on factors extending beyond physical surroundings alone. Individual virtue, hereditary variations, and heavenly favor each contributed to determining how long any person might survive. Eber's influence stretched far past his 464 years, his very name becoming attached to an entire people destined to safeguard divine knowledge across countless generations. The subsequent dramatic milestone arrived through Peleg, whose mere 239 years plummeted sharply from his father's 464. Sacred records document that Peleg reached 30 when Ru entered the world, then persisted another 209 years while fathering more children. His name translates as division, with scripture explaining this choice by noting that during his lifetime, the earth became separated. This refers to humanity's scattering following the Tower of Babel incident, when the Almighty scrambled tongues and dispersed populations globally. Peleg's drastically curtailed 239 years coincided with this watershed moment in collective human experience. Fragmenting humanity into isolated linguistic communities, followed by mass migrations toward unfamiliar territories, introduced fresh obstacles for survival and longevity. Populations now inhabited less hospitable regions, confronted alien landscapes, and gradually lost the pooled wisdom and refined practices cultivated during post-catastrophe recovery. The trauma of relocation, hardships establishing fresh communities, and separation from humanity's collective knowledge reservoir all intensified the quickening decline. Peleg's 239 years represented the threshold where human duration dropped beneath 250 for the first time since the deluge. This steep reduction reflected compounding pressures from worsening surroundings, corrupting hereditary material, and the trials of existence in the fragmented post-Babel landscape. Humanity's division additionally meant that healing knowledge, nutritional understanding, and survival methods no longer circulated effectively among all communities, producing uneven health outcomes. Ryu reached 32 when Serug arrived, then continued 207 additional years, raising more offspring. This matching duration hints that circumstances governing human longevity had temporarily plateaued at this diminished threshold. Ryu occupied the dispersion epoch following Babel's Tower, when separate populations were founding fresh civilizations throughout distant regions. His 239 years encompassed tremendous cultural and technical advancement as scattered human clusters adapted to unfamiliar surroundings while cultivating distinctive traits. The precise alignment between his years and his father's might signaled that environmental and hereditary influences on duration had achieved momentary balance. The most severe post-deluge environmental collapse had already occurred, and though circumstances remained far from optimal, sufficient stability existed to sustain consistent lifespans hovering around 2 centuries. Ryu's contemporaries were mastering existence within post-Babel realities, crafting survival approaches and cultural traditions suited to their transformed circumstances. His 239 years afforded adequate opportunity for establishing robust community foundations while conveying essential understanding to subsequent generations. The matching durations between Ru and his father additionally suggests that hereditary elements were assuming heightened importance in governing longevity as physical surroundings stabilized at their reduced baseline. Serug perpetuated the trajectory at 230 years, confirming the downward drift had resumed. Scripture documents that Serug welcomed Nahor at 30, then endured another 2 centuries while producing additional offspring. Serug's 230 years constituted a modest yet meaningful decrease from Ru's 239. This 9-year gap might appear trivial, yet it confirmed that forces driving declining duration remained active. Serug inhabited an era when human society was achieving unprecedented intricacy and variety. Scattered communities worldwide were birthing unique languages, customs, and innovations, generating both creative breakthroughs and growing separation. Accumulated consequences from generations inhabiting suboptimal circumstances manifested through persistent lifespan erosion. Hereditary corruption steadily multiplied, physical surroundings kept degrading incrementally, and mastery of optimal wellness practices diluted as communities drifted further apart. Serug's 230 years represented another stride toward the abbreviated existences defining later epochs. His journey connected the dispersion era with the approaching age of legendary patriarchs, including Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Serug's contemporaries prepared the ground for humanity's next chapter, when heaven would select Abraham and forge a unique covenant bond with his offspring. Shrinking duration throughout Serug's era instilled pressing awareness about preserving vital understanding and customs, as successive generations possessed diminishing time for transmitting hard-won lessons to children and grandchildren. The trajectory crystallizing across these post-deluge generations exposed the relentless character of declining human duration. Spanning from Noah's 950 years down to Serug's 230, we observe steady erosion in the foundations supporting extended existence. The pristine realm enabling antediluvian patriarchs to approach a millennium had vanished permanently, obliterated by the catastrophe that reset human civilization. The protective vapor barrier had disintegrated, weather patterns turned severe and unpredictable. The hereditary reservoir contracted to just 8 survivors, and the planet itself underwent fundamental transformation through devastating waters. Each succeeding generation inherited marginally greater hereditary corruption, inhabited marginally more degraded surroundings, and accessed marginally inferior nourishment and living arrangements. Babel's scattering hastened this erosion by splintering collective human understanding and compelling populations toward unfamiliar, frequently hostile territories. Yet divine compassion remained visible through the measured pace of this deterioration, granting humanity adequate opportunity for adjustment while ensuring vital wisdom could still flow between generations. Though drastically shortened compared to pre-deluge standards, these post-catastrophe patriarchs retained sufficient years to anchor society and maintain continuity throughout civilization's critical rebuilding centuries. Human duration stood poised for precipitous acceleration in its downward spiral. Following Serug's 230 years, the succeeding generation would confront an unprecedented collapse, bringing humanity substantially nearer contemporary lifespans. Nahor, Serug's heir, managed merely 148 years, according to sacred records. Scripture notes he reached 29 when Terah arrived, then continued 119 additional years, producing more offspring. Nahor's 148 years constituted a jarring 82-year plunge from his father's 230, representing 36% evaporation within a single generation. This severe contraction inaugurated the terminal phase of humanity's longevity erosion. For the initial time since the deluge, human existence had contracted beneath 150 years. Nahor inhabited an epoch when accumulated consequences from all post-catastrophe transformations approached critical mass. Hereditary corruption from cosmic ray bombardment had compounded across generations. Physical surroundings kept worsening, and the spiritual chasm separating humanity from the divine had widened considerably. Nahor's abbreviated span reflected these multiplying pressures converging simultaneously. His 148 years remained considerable by contemporary measures, yet signaled a fundamental shift toward the truncated existences destined to become humanity's norm. Nahor's contemporaries were observing accelerating decay processes that had built momentum steadily since Noah's era. Human physiology was growing less hardy, less capable of self-restoration, more vulnerable to ailments and environmental pressures characterizing existence in the corrupted realm. Nahor's 148 years identified the threshold where human duration commenced its terminal descent toward recognizable modern levels. Terah, Nahor's heir, reversed expectations by achieving 205 years. Scripture records that Terah's complete journey spanned 205 years before concluding in Haran. This figure marked an unexpected 57-year expansion beyond his father's 148, demonstrating that decline didn't follow rigid consistency. Nevertheless, Terah's importance transcends his personal duration enormously. He fathered Abraham, and his passing closed one chapter while inaugurating another. Terah occupied the transitional space connecting the epoch of fading patriarchs with the dawn of heaven's specially chosen people. His 205 years bridged a momentous historical interval when the Almighty was preparing to select Abraham and forge renewed bonds with humanity. Terah commenced traveling from Ur toward Canaan, yet never reached his destination, establishing residence instead in Haran, where death found him. His unfinished voyage became emblematic of his entire generation. They occupied liminal space between the fading world of diminishing lifespans and the emerging world of covenant assurances. Terah's 205 years sufficed for witnessing Abraham's arrival and early formation, the individual destined to become faith's patriarch. Yet Terah himself remained constrained by his generation's boundaries, incapable of completing the pilgrimage his son would ultimately finish. Terah's death in Haran concluded the era of progressively declining patriarchs while inaugurating the age of covenant pledges. His 205 years represented the final generation preceding heaven's summons to Abraham and establishment of the lineage through which every nation would receive blessing. Abraham followed, among history's most consequential figures, achieving 175 years. Sacred texts document that Abraham's earthly journey measured 175 years. Afterward, he released his final breath, departing at advanced age, satisfied and complete, reuniting with his ancestors. Abraham's 175 years fell 30 short of his father Terah's 205, perpetuating the overall descending pattern. However, Abraham's weight in history vastly exceeds his personal duration. He emerged as faith's founding father, the vessel through whom heaven forged its covenant with humanity. Abraham's 175 years unfolded during an epoch when human duration had contracted dramatically from the near millennium spans characterizing antediluvian patriarchs, yet his existence achieved extraordinary richness and purpose. Throughout his 175 years, Abraham encountered heaven's summons, abandoned familiar territory, received pledges about becoming a mighty nation, welcomed Isaac during advanced years, and observed initial phases of the divine covenant unfolding. Abraham's duration aligned perfectly with heaven's intentions, sufficient for establishing robust foundations for his offspring, yet brief enough to generate urgency about transmitting covenant pledges. His 175 years permitted him to watch Isaac mature and wed Rebekah, securing the covenant bloodline's continuation. Abraham's lifespan proved that despite humanity's declining duration, heaven could still realize its designs through devoted individuals. His 175 years overflowed with trust, compliance, and confidence in divine pledges, revealing that existence's richness mattered beyond mere accumulated years. Abraham's journey demonstrated that truncated existence need not diminish extraordinary achievement and lasting influence. Isaac, Abraham's heir, reached 180 years according to sacred records, describing his days as 180 years total. This figure actually surpassed his father by 5 years, confirming that individual fluctuations persisted despite the broader descending trajectory. Isaac's extended years brought the blessing of observing his twin boys, Jacob and Esau, develop fully while watching heaven's covenant assurances advance through Jacob's line. Isaac's 180 years encompassed a vital stretch in the covenant community's formation. He survived long enough to witness Jacob's 12 sons arrive, confirming that the promised great nation was progressing toward reality. Isaac's duration carried particular weight because it anchored his family through turbulent transitions. His 180 years enabled him to connect Abraham's generation with Jacob's, guaranteeing faithful transmission of covenant assurances from one patriarch to the next. Isaac's journey reflected steady, unassuming devotion, distinct from his father's bold ventures and his son's wrestling faith. His 180 years overflowed with consistent heavenly favor and shelter, proving divine blessing could still prolong existence even amid humanity's general shortening trend. Isaac's lengthy years also permitted substantial wealth accumulation and solid bonds with neighboring peoples, constructing stable ground for future generations. His 180 years confirmed that though human duration kept contracting, heaven's covenant community could still encounter special favor and protection. Jacob, Isaac's heir, achieved 147 years as scripture documents. Noting he dwelt 17 years in Egyptian territory, his complete earthly span reaching 147 years. Jacob's 147 years constituted a considerable 33-year descent from Isaac's 180, pushing human duration back beneath the 150-year threshold. Jacob stood as the final towering patriarch, his 147 years concluding an entire biblical epoch. Throughout his lifetime, Abraham's offspring expanded from a solitary household toward an emerging nation, with Jacob's 12 sons founding the dozen tribes bearing Israel's name. Jacob's 147 years brimmed with conflict, maturation, and profound transformation. He tasted divine blessing alongside heavenly correction, escaped fraternal fury, labored under Laban's authority, grappled with the Almighty himself, and ultimately became Israel, the one who contended with heaven and prevailed. His extended years permitted witnessing every son reach full adulthood and observing his clan's preservation through devastating famine via Joseph's Egyptian authority. Jacob's 147 years bridged the wandering existence characterizing patriarchal times with the settled Egyptian dwelling defining Israel's subsequent chapter. His passing concluded the patriarchal epoch while inaugurating the national period for heaven's chosen community. Jacob's 147 years sufficed for conveying covenant assurances to all 12 sons, ensuring each tribal line understood their inheritance and calling. His prophetic pronouncements over his sons before death illuminated each tribe's destiny, proving that despite shrinking lifespans, heaven could still employ faithful servants for accomplishing enduring purposes. Duration collapsed sharply with Joseph, Jacob's son, who managed merely 110 years. Scripture records that Joseph resided in Egyptian territory alongside his father's household. Joseph survived 110 years before death claimed him at that age. They preserved his body through embalming, placing him within a burial vessel in Egyptian soil. Joseph's 110 years marked a startling 37-year plunge from Jacob's 147, representing 25% evaporation within one generation. For the initial occasion since the catastrophic deluge, human existence had contracted beneath 120 years, approaching contemporary expectations considerably. Joseph's abbreviated span reflected accelerating decay processes alongside persistent consequences from environmental erosion, hereditary corruption, and widening spiritual separation from the divine. Nevertheless, Joseph's 110 years achieved remarkable productivity and influence. Throughout his journey, he ascended from bondage to occupy Egypt's second highest position, rescued his kinfolk and surrounding territories from starvation, and planted Israel within Egyptian soil, where they would multiply into a mighty nation. Joseph's 110 years proved that even substantially shortened existence could yield extraordinary accomplishments and fulfill essential roles within heaven's design. His journey confirmed that divine blessing could transform even comparatively brief years into tremendously meaningful, consequential living. Joseph's 110 years additionally signaled transition from individual patriarchs toward national development for Israel. His death concluded the era dominated by singular founding fathers while inaugurating tribal and collective identity for heaven's people. Joseph's duration aligned precisely with divine intentions, sufficient for establishing Israel within Egypt and watching the clan multiply, yet brief enough to kindle anticipation for future covenant fulfillment within Canaan's borders. Following Joseph, multiple centuries elapsed before Scripture recorded another major figure's lifespan. When Moses emerged, human duration had plateaued at levels approximating contemporary standards. Moses achieved 120 years as sacred texts document, noting he reached that age when death arrived. Remarkably, his vision remained sharp and his physical vigor undiminished. Moses's 120 years actually exceeded Joseph's 110, though this represented stabilization rather than trend reversal. His longevity proved extraordinary for that epoch, clearly representing special heavenly blessing suited to his singular mission of liberating Israel from Egyptian bondage and delivering divine instruction. The observation that his vision stayed clear and his vitality remained undiminished indicates Moses experienced miraculous preservation of his bodily capacities despite advanced years. Moses' 120 years aligned flawlessly with his calling. 4 decades in Egyptian courts taught him governance. 4 decades tending flocks in barren wilderness cultivated reliance upon heaven, and 4 decades guiding Israel from captivity toward their promised homeland completed his earthly assignment. His extended years permitted finishing the colossal undertaking of forging Israel into a unified people, equipped with comprehensive judicial and spiritual frameworks. Moses' 120 years, additionally, provided adequate time for an entire Israelite generation to perish in desert wanderings, guaranteeing those crossing into the promised territory carried no psychological chains from Egyptian servitude. His duration proved heaven could still bestow remarkable longevity upon those selected for extraordinary assignments, despite humanity's general lifespan having contracted severely from ancient times. Moses' 120 years established something of a ceiling for exceptional human duration throughout subsequent eras. By Moses' generation, human longevity had essentially reached levels familiar to us presently. This plateau appears within Psalm 90, verse 10, which Moses himself composed, acknowledging that human years typically span 70, perhaps reaching 80 for the particularly robust, though even those additional years bring weariness and hardship before swift departure arrives. Moses' recognition that typical human existence stretched between 7 and 8 decades captured humanity's transformed reality. The near millennium spans enjoyed by antediluvian patriarchs had faded into distant memory, and even the multi-century durations achieved by post-deluge forebears belonged to bygone ages. Humanity had arrived at the longevity threshold, defining all subsequent history. This plateau, around 70 to 80 years, reflected fresh equilibrium achieved among hereditary factors, surrounding conditions, and sacred influences. Human physiology had adjusted to post-catastrophe existence as thoroughly as possible, while hereditary corruption had decelerated to manageable rates. Physical surroundings, though vastly inferior to original conditions, had stabilized sufficiently to sustain predictable lifespans within this bracket. Regarding sacred matters, humanity had discovered new normalcy in relating to the divine, still corrupted and distanced from Eden's flawless communion, yet never entirely severed from heavenly favor and miraculous involvement. Moses' words in that psalm acknowledged both the actuality of contracted lifespans and the continuing possibility of purposeful, fruitful existence within those boundaries. His characterization of life involving hardship and grief reflected consequences flowing from the original curse, while his acknowledgement that some reach 80 confirmed divine blessing remained accessible. The expression 70 years established baseline expectations for human existence, while 80 years indicated what remained achievable for those possessing unusual vigor or heavenly favor. This 70 to 80 bracket would persist as humanity's standard from Moses' epoch through contemporary times, revealing how precisely he grasped the transformed human condition. This plateau, around 70 to 80 years, concluded the extended deterioration from near-millennium existences down to circumstances we recognize presently. The contributing elements behind this severe contraction: environmental erosion, hereditary corruption, cosmic radiation bombardment, nutritional transformation, and sacred estrangement from the divine, had achieved equilibrium where they no longer dramatically hastened decay processes. Human physiology had adjusted to these demanding circumstances as thoroughly as feasible, while hereditary alterations had stabilized at thresholds supporting consistent duration within the 70 to 80 bracket. Surrounding conditions so radically transformed by the deluge had discovered fresh stability that, while vastly removed from Eden's perfection, remained steady enough to sustain foreseeable human lifespans. From Moses' era onward, extraordinary longevity would prove uncommon, typically connected with special heavenly blessing for particular purposes. Occasionally, individuals would surpass typical boundaries, some attaining 90, 100, even 120 years. Yet these remained anomalies rather than expectations. The epoch of towering patriarchs enjoying phenomenal duration had concluded, and humanity had entered the age of ordinary mortality, persisting through present times. The precipitous descent from Methuselah's 969 years down to Moses' recognition of 70 to 80 as standard represented among the most profound shifts in human experience, signaling transition from the ancient realm of extraordinary duration toward the contemporary world of bounded existence. This metamorphosis in human longevity narrates humanity's odyssey from paradise through divine judgment toward transformed normalcy. The near-millennium spans characterizing earliest patriarchs served as reminders of what humanity forfeited when corruption invaded creation, while the progressive contraction toward 70 to 80 illustrated cumulative consequences of inhabiting a corrupted realm. Yet even throughout this deterioration, divine compassion remained visible. The transition proceeded gradually rather than abruptly, affording humanity opportunity for adjustment while ensuring vital knowledge and sacred purposes could still find accomplishment within abbreviated existences. The plateau at 70 to 80 years embodied a form of heavenly mercy, preventing human duration from collapsing to levels rendering purposeful existence impossible, while still acknowledging mortal reality and corruption's consequences. Should this expedition through sacred history have touched you, consider subscribing and becoming part of our community as we investigate additional remarkable biblical mysteries together. Pass this presentation along to someone who should encounter this extraordinary narrative. It might fundamentally reshape their understanding of existence itself. Share in the comments what struck you most powerfully about this journey, spanning from 969 years down to 70 or 80. Your reflections enrich our community as we venture deeper into sacred scripture together.